All right.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's going to be a fun conversation. Guest, the woman of the hour, woman of the day, Brittany See, everybody. Super excited about this, actually. So for everybody listening, Brittany and I are business partners. You're the co-founder of Ascent Digital. You're also our vice president of operations. Probably the most brilliant marketing mind that I've ever had the opportunity to work with. You're a mom. You're a community leader. You're a leader in business. So many things. And I'm excited to hear your story and pick your brain. It's funny, some of the podcasts that I'm most nervous for sometimes are people that I know well. Like I can sit across the table from a stranger and it's like, I got nothing to lose. I can just, chat with people. But it's fun because I'm hoping I get to, hear a little bit more of your story that I haven't heard. And anyway, kind of talk through some things. So it's going to be fun. Where I want to start, if you don't mind, because one of the things that I've heard us say, from time to time when we're in conversations with people is I'm like, I was born to be an entrepreneur. I was meant to be a business owner. Like this is, who I am. And you say, I never imagined I'd be a business owner. Walk me through that. I want to talk about like kind of your progression. Because when I first met you, you were doing, you were at the, I think, Access Health. You were doing something at Access Health. And, I've been able to witness sort of this move from Access Health to sales, to management, to, business ownership and all of this stuff. Walk me through those early days, kind of what it's like seeing yourself as a business owner and sort of how that transition happened.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with like my background and then go into that.
Perfect.
I went to school for psychology and biology. I wanted to be a behavior neuroscientist, do brain and behavior research. When I graduated, I realized that my personality didn't belong closed in a lab all day long. And so I didn't really know what to do with myself because I didn't want to do clinical psychology. That was never my path. I couldn't.
How come? Why did you study psychology then? Because you thought you were going to?
No, so clinical psychology is like therapy.
Got it.
So it's like patient care.
Okay.
I wanted to do the research aspect of psychology.
Got it.
And so then I just I was working 2 jobs, as a bartender at 2 restaurants in town. And I was like, well, I just graduated. I should probably find purpose. I started volunteering at the Southwest Safe House. So I would go, I didn't do anything profound there. I just went there and cooked dinner for all the ladies and the kids that were there. So that was kind of nice and helped clean up leaves and all of that stuff. But then I applied for a job at the health department, just as a receptionist, you're fresh out of college.
Any job will do.
Anything, any professional job just to get your leg into the professional field, I didn't get that, but they referred me to Access Health because they were looking for a receptionist, and so I interviewed there, and I actually got it, and that was my first career job.
Real job.
Yeah. Because I had worked in restaurants for 10 years, and then retail before that, in high school. So I started out there. I worked at the front desk for 6 months, and then I moved into outreach and enrollment, where I signed up people for health insurance, and if they were lower income, then I would sign them up for Medicaid. I had to market that program actually, so that's where I started marketing. Yeah, so I had to create flyers and just do outreach and get people enrolled in healthcare because that was the huge Obamacare push back then. So I did that for maybe 6 months, 6 to 8 months, and then I moved into case management. And then
what's case management?
So case management is where you work with people with severe mental illness, where you help them get the basic needs taken care of. So maybe they need housing, or they need health insurance, or they need long-term care, or just any types of things, a cell phone. They had cell phone programs where you could get a free phone. So I would just connect them with resources so that their basic needs were met, because Maslow's hierarchy of needs, your basic needs have to be met before you can even think about working on your mental health.
Right.
And so I was like that person before, like that, like kind of helped them while they were in therapy at Access Health.
To get their basic needs met.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, it was, like it took a lot of skill to not take, because I was like a glorified therapist at that point. Like people just dumped all their stuff on me. So it took a lot of skill not to take that in and like just kind of separate myself from them. And so I had to start paying attention to my body language. I had to ask therapists like what they do. Like some of them are like, when you get home, you take off your clothes right away and change, like so that you're separating your life, or you go to the bathroom before you leave work, wash your hands of the day and like leave. So it was like actual acts of doing things to make sure that you don't take what you got that day through work like with you home.
Right.
And it was just like I have too much empathy, and so that job was really hard for me because sometimes you would work so hard to get clients what they needed, and then they would unravel the entire thing, and it's like, oh my gosh, like it's just crazy. Like there were times where like I had a client that was a hoarder, and I like helped her actually clean her house so that she wasn't evicted, and then she would just get more stuff like and I mean that's just what it was, and I was good at my job, and when you're good at your job you get more work, and so they actually they lost the vocational specialist, and so they combined my position. I was a case manager and a vocational specialist, and I had like 100 clients at that point.
Jeez.
It was like I managed it. I did my best. Like I felt like I've always been pretty good like in the jobs that I do. But I wanted more, and I didn't want to be a therapist. So there was nowhere to move up. Like I was kind of exploring other aspects of Access Health. Like they had like a data manager. And so I was kind of like working under her and learning how to like input data, but just not my personality.
The data side makes sense though.
It does. It really does. And that's probably where I would have went, like if I would have stayed with them more into like the data, like the management side of things, not like patient care. Right. And I would always like look for jobs, and I would see, I was like actually applying jobs at the end. Like I got an offer at the health department as one of their case managers again. But they didn't, it didn't justify, like it wasn't really a step up for me. And so I would always be looking at jobs, and I'd see like marketing jobs, and I was like, God, why couldn't I have gone to school for marketing? Like that sounds so fun. Like I love that. And then Greer Taylor, she's like,
shout out to Greer.
Yeah, hi Greer. She's an old college friend. We served tables at Motu's together, and we would like always hang out like when we were both in school at the fort. And she called me one day, and she was like, hey, like, BCI Media is hiring like for a salesperson. I think you would be a really good fit. And I was like, Greer, I have no clue about marketing at all. Like, how am I going to do this? And she's like, just interview. Like, and so, I applied for the job. I got connected with Ben, and he interviewed me, for a sales position at BCI selling digital marketing products. Or you interviewed me, I guess.
I remember, it's funny because I remember that interview. Yeah. And some of the stuff we talked about was you were like, I was realizing, and it's been really fun. We'll dive into it, as the conversation continues. But one of the coolest things about our partnership has been your background in psychology, and then, my formal background in marketing and economics and things like that. There's some really great complementing aspects there in terms of running a business, especially a marketing business. Yeah. But I remember when we were interviewing and you were telling me how like you don't have sales experience and you don't have marketing experience, and I was like, yes, you do. You just don't realize it yet from all of the, from like your casework and, the stuff that you were doing there. Because it's like, I don't know, like real salesmanship isn't the used car salesman, floaty wavy guy out front. Like, what's it going to take? It's like actually solving problems for people and being a resource and stuff. Yeah. And I noticed that in you from even your days at Access Health. So it was funny because that just is a blast from the past, because I remember that interview like it was yesterday now of like, yeah, no, you'd be surprised how much selling you're actually doing. Anyway, it's funny.
Something that stuck with me from what you, like when you hired me, or like on paper, I would never hire you, but meeting you sold me. Like, and so like, And so I got the job. And at that time I had let you know, like, I'm moving to Montana in a month. Like, are you sure you want to hire me? Because I needed to change. My husband at the time, his parents lived in Montana, so we wanted to be closer to family so that we could start our own family.
Right.
And
no kids yet.
No, not yet.
Onyx came
no. He came after. I got hired, I think, like in March of 2019 with BCI Media, and then we moved like in May. And then Onyx, I got pregnant October 2019.
Right. Yeah, he's a pandemic baby.
Yeah. He's a
Yeah.
Oh,
I just remembered a chapter that we'll talk about. But
yeah. And so I just learned everything I could about digital marketing, and how to sell, pretty much. Like, I would listen to books on selling, like read books on selling, look at like articles, just dove into the world of marketing. And I felt that, like, in order to sell it, I needed to know the fulfillment of it,
right.
like how everything actually works. Like, how do you build out a campaign and all of that stuff? And so I started learning everything, not just like how to sell digital marketing, but the inner workings of it. And I think that really set me up for success there.
Yeah, I'm curious. One of the things I've noticed about you, and I've even said it, and I'm sure we'll get to some of this in today's conversation, but you and I have, we get along great, and then sometimes we don't, and then sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't, and it's like any partnership, and we'll be able to talk about some of that. But one of the things I've always admired about you a ton is that you have this ability to take new information and then, and use it. Like, it sticks, and you change your approach or tactics or whatever. I'm trying to think about how to explain that better. But it's like you're able to get new information and then change your opinion or your view of the world or like how you actually do things. And I'm curious because even right there where you're talking about learning, sales and marketing, and I hadn't looked at it in this perspective at that, chapter of your life, but you're gathering information and then you're actually applying it. Mm-hmm. And which is, believe it or not, really, really unique. A lot of people get a ton of information and then don't do anything with it, like actually being able to change. Any insight? Because now it's clear that has been something about you for as long as I've known you, at least, since 2019, at least. Any idea where that came from, or like have you always been that way of like, I'm trying to think how to explain it better, but it's like you're in information gathering mode and then execution mode. And I've seen it portray in as simple as like whatever, analytics or a website, a tactical thing, but I've also seen it in like emotional things and, interpersonal dynamics and all these things where like you gather information and then change behavior with that information. Have you always been like that, or did that come from somewhere?
I think like I've always been a very like studious kid. Like I've always done well in school, but I also have like this rebellious side. So like I would not go to school and then go take the test and do well on the test. And that's how I would pass, because I would never do my homework or anything like that. And I think, I don't know, like I've just always been ingrained to be an independent woman, not depend on any man to like for your success, all of that stuff. And my mom has always been a hard worker, and so she would take me to the office, she would make me file for her and like just teach me all of this like professional stuff,
right.
Like skill set. My motivator though, like most people say money is their motivator. My motivator is learning. And so that's like, I have like, even though I don't do well with change, like I'm a little I'm cautious about change, but I accept it. So at first I'm like, no. And then like I'll accept it eventually. But even though I'm against it a little bit, I feel that learning, we're always going to be learning our entire lives. Like there's so much to learn out there. And like you can't be stuck in your ways. Like even with the agency, like if you're not happy with a software, let's look at other softwares, but present it to me,
right.
Because I don't have time to do this for you. Like present it to me, try it out, and if you like it, let's do it. I built this agency on the softwares that I found that worked, because like you and I were doing everything in the beginning, and so I don't know, like I have this thing where I can just like look at a computer software or like anything and I can figure it out right away. one of our clients has City Hive to sell their shop stuff, and like I went in there and like I figured out how to do SMS messaging like super quick. Like it's just really intuitive for me, like softwares, computer systems, like all of these things. And I think maybe it's our generation, because we were introduced to computers like when we were young, and like it's evolved. Technology has evolved so drastically in our lifetime, and so I think that might have something to do with it as well. But I like to learn and I like to apply it. When it comes to the personal stuff, though, like, it's really hard for me to change like my emotions and my behavior. Like I wear, like, my emotions are shown very easily, like with people. It's hard for me to like keep my composure sometimes, and so that's been really hard. Like I have all these skill sets, I know all these skills to do, like to like keep your emotions in check and all this, but like I think behavior changes are the hardest thing to do
for everybody. I mean, gosh, you want to talk about, I mean, I just had Dr. Nancy Utter on a couple weeks ago, and she's a naturopathic doctor, and was talking about how so many times some of the ailments that her patients are dealing with can be changed with just lifestyle, and that's like the hardest thing to change, you know, behaviors. But it's interesting, you talk about how learning it motivates you type of thing. It's funny because, and there's so many things now, especially now that we're in a good spot, you know, partnership wise and business wise. And I look back and there's like these complementing things. I'm terrible at that stuff. Where I'm at my best is when I'm building anything, building a business, building a body, a barn, a walls, you know, whatever. Like I'm like, let me build something. And you're like, let me learn something. And so it's great because like we can be building and learning, you know, simultaneously, which is just, it's just funny. I'm curious though, and you know, kind of coming back to the original idea of you never imagined yourself being a business owner. Right. There's a chapter of your life though that I want to hear more about what it was like. And we talked about Onyx being a pandemic baby, which it sounds like not the best term.
COVID baby.
A COVID baby.
Yeah, that's not any better.
But there's a chapter of your life that I had some exposure to that was, I think, kind of a microcosm for who you are that I want to unpack and hear about a little bit.
Yeah.
You're living in Montana. The pandemic's happening. I believe at our last job you were just promoted to manager or something. Like something had happened in your professional world. Your husband was out of work, call it for the pandemic or whatever reason, but he was out of work. You were pregnant, like very pregnant, and you broke your leg. So I remember this like moment where, or your ankle or something. Or was Onyx already here when you broke your leg?
No, I was pregnant.
So I'm just envisioning this you know, the world's chaos. There's the pandemic happening. You have an increase in responsibility at work. You're pregnant. You've got to, you know, shoulder all of the financial situations for your house. And then you broke your leg on top of it. And I remember being like, oh my gosh. And you would like, you know, crutch your way into sales meetings or whatever. My point in bringing that up though is that there's like, you know, there's all these things happening that are these outside forces that, you know, some are great. Like, you know, being pregnant is, I don't want to say that, imply that that's a bad thing, but it's a challenge. It's a thing you have to, you know, deal with at the time. There's all these things happening. And then there's Brittany just charging forward and you know, chugging along. I want insight into that chapter, like those kind of moments and what it was like and where sort of, because what I witnessed there is some resolve, like some not quit in you, you know, like just going to keep it going. I want to hear about what's your mindset in those times and what was that sort of, because that was a pretty, I don't know, it's a microcosm for who you are, I think, and it's a pretty pivotal, you know, chapter in the Brittany See story because it shows some character traits that I'm excited to learn about.
Yeah. To be honest, like, when you're in that stuff, like it's hard, but like you just keep going, like you have a life to live, you know? And so like I didn't really have like thoughts like,
and oh,
my life is so hard. Like I don't have those thoughts because I know that life is hard and we're thrown adversity all the time, and like we just have to keep going. Like it sucks. Like I've cried a lot. Like I've had it hard, like the past few years, and I don't want to be the victim or anything, but like I don't like feel it in the moment. I just get through it. And then like I feel it after I get through it. And so, yeah, I was a breadwinner. I did everything for our household. I shouldered everything. Like I was the homemaker, the breadwinner, the caregiver for my child. I like everything. Like I remember before, like in my third trimester, I was running after my dog at the park, and I went to go grab his collar, and I like the momentum of my belly, because I was just all belly weight.
Pregnant, yeah.
The momentum of my belly toppled me forward, and my ankle just like snapped, and I just remember being like, oh, like, and then just like sat down. Like it was like the softest fall ever, and then like I couldn't walk. Like I snapped my ankle in half. I went to the hospital, like, and it was a crazy moment to have to get surgery when you're in your third trimester. So they had to give me a spinal tap because they can't put you to sleep.
Anesthesia.
Yeah, you can't do that with a baby. And so I remember just like crutching around with this big old belly, like going up and down stairs. Like there was a moment where like, and I don't want to like harp on my ex-husband at all, but there's a significant memory in my head of me trying to clean up our house, and I was vacuuming pregnant with crutches. Like it was awful. Like I don't know, like just so many moments when we were in Montana, I felt so isolated. I felt all alone, and I was shouldering the weight of all of the responsibility within our household, and it was tough. But I mean, I got through it, and good things came out of it. Like Onyx is like my pride and joy. Like
he's all right.
Yeah, right. But just like so happy that something so beautiful can come out of a terrible, toxic situation.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, like, so in the moment, I don't really like take pity on myself or like think about it. Like I have conversations with my mom, and I cry, and like I talk it out and stuff, and like but you just have to keep going. Like life does not stop for you.
Right.
Like you have to keep going. Like and so that's what I did. Like I thrive. I seek success. I seek good people in this world to surround myself with, and I just go. Like,
and then, so what I'm because, well, we'll dive into some of that, because it's just so cool. It was so fun for me to observe,
yeah.
Even those, and I haven't reflected on that in years, by the way, until just this moment.
Yeah.
Like I forgot about all that stuff. And then I'm trying to think what the timeline was, but it was less than a year later that we quit our jobs. And go ahead. And I'm curious because, if you were to like line out, ideal situations to quit a job or, take a risk or be an entrepreneur or whatever, a new mom with all of the things that we had just talked about, it probably doesn't fit that mold for somebody that should take a risk and quit their job, but you did. And I want to hear why. I want to hear how. I want to hear about like that moment, because, I quit my job too. I was in a different situation, but I took a lot of risk, and I'm proud of it. Nicole was pregnant with our third, and
yeah.
I had promoted my way up. And so that was, a thing, but I had a supportive household. I had savings, there was some things there. You somehow had the courage to, risk it all and quit your job and, join me on this crazy journey. Why? What gave you the courage to walk away from the job at that time?
Yeah, that was crazy, because I had just gotten promoted. I had gotten a raise, like a significant raise, like more than I had ever made in my entire life. And like Montana's like economy is a little bit more manageable than Colorado. So like
making Colorado wages, living in Montana.
So we were doing.
You bought a house, like
yeah. Well, that was before, but like we were doing really well in Montana, and yeah, I don't know. I wanted to do better for clients. For like, I had all this knowledge. Like, I remember I even wanted them to move me into fulfillment. I wanted to be the fulfillment manager, and they told me no, because I was so good at my job as a salesperson, because I had like opened up a whole new market for them. Like, I like had so many clients in Montana. I built a reputation for our company, like not our company, but that company. And I was just thriving. And like I said, I got promoted to manager. You were director. Like things were good, but we felt stifled in our jobs. Like we felt like we couldn't provide the greatest quality or tailor things to clients like how they deserve to be. Like, we should be able to customize strategy for clients and meet them where they're at, not have these like packages that we have to like serve them or whatever it might be. And then also, like, I like the fulfillment side of things, and so like sales was tough for me. I'm an introvert. Like, I like to stay home in my sweatpants and not go out and socialize, and I had to go socialize and go to networking events every week. I had to go to B&I every morning at 7 a.m. on Thursdays, like just all of these things. Like, I think I was like in 3 standing groups every week for networking, and like I was even running one of the groups, and then I was going to like business after hours and like all of those like events, and it was just a lot for me in my personality, because like I like people, kind of.
When you're in the right mood.
Yeah. And like helping people, and like, yeah, that's great, but I don't.
You also love when you can be on your own.
I love being on my own. But anyway, so
but that's not enough to walk away from all that stability.
It's not, but I trusted you. Like, I trusted you. I knew our capabilities. I had faith like in our like what we could do and what we could build, and I had no fear. Like, I had no fear. I had peace with myself, and like when I don't have any like remorse, like nothing like going on, like this internal torment, of like, what decision should I make? Like, that is how I know when to make a decision. That's the right decision. It's like a right decision because it feels like peace. And I had to even get a loan on top of that because we didn't have capital.
Nothing.
Like, you and I both had to put money into our business to start it. And so I had to get a loan. And I remember my mom, like, we kind of like had a falling out because she was like, how could you do that? Like, why didn't you ask us for help? Like, all of this stuff. Like, she was like putting all of this like regret or like, I don't know, just making me doubt my decision. And I was like, Mom, you can't do that. Like, I'm an adult in my 30s. Like, you cannot come at me and be like, how could you do this? Or like give me any doubts and decisions that I make, because I felt at peace with this decision. I felt good about it. And like, we've struggled, Ben, like, owning a business, building a business, being a startup, whatever it is, like, it is so hard.
Brutally difficult is the way I describe it.
So much. And we've learned so much, though. Like, I never thought I would be a business owner. I never wanted to be a business owner. I was just going to advance in my careers because I've always done that. Like, I always just move up to different positions and I just like gain more skill sets. And I was just going to work for like a major company someday. Like, my dream company would be like be a vice president of marketing for Vans shoes, but I mean, or an outdoor company or something.
Maybe we go get him as a client.
Yeah, something. But no, like this wasn't expected, but it was right. Like,
wild.
It's been right. Like, and even though we've struggled, we've built something so significant, and I'm really proud of ourselves for what we've done. And I tell people all the time, like, owning a business, we've only been in business for 3 years, but like, we've gained the experience
30 years.
and the skill set of like people that have worked for a company for maybe like 10 years.
Right.
Like, we've advanced so much, like, in such a short amount of time. Like, it's insane. Like, I know like moves to make before like they're even announced with like platforms. Like, for like with the with short form vertical form like format like video on social media, like 6 months before Facebook even announced that, or even like any of our partners like caught on to that, I was like, we need to use vertical video like for all of our ads. Like, nothing else is working. We need to do this. And like, so like I know that like I'm very skilled in what we're doing, and so are you. Like, we're like the dream team. Like, we're doing something significant here, and yeah, it's just something to be proud about.
Yeah.
We never like really reflect on that.
No, that's what I'm
Like,
saying, and
yeah.
that's what is so. That's what I'm so fascinated about is that I don't know that just that you had the courage and the foresight or whatever, because for everybody listening, it's not like you had money and a mansion and your husband was making a ton of money and you could just like take a risk and whatever. Like, you literally had it all to lose.
Yeah.
And then you took on more debt, walked away from a very stable, very good paying job while being the breadwinner, while being a mom, all of these things. Like, I don't even know if I can properly articulate how immensely risky that moment was. And it's crazy to hear that you never felt fear. Like, that you felt peace about it the whole time. I just think, because I was terrified.
I mean, I've always been good with money, like financially, and so I had money. We didn't pay ourselves for like 3 months?
Yeah.
Like when we started it. But I
remember our first check was like $1,700, like
yeah.
3 months later. And I was pumped about it. Like, I remember the number.
Yeah. I don't remember
I
that,
do.
but like, yeah, it's definitely it hasn't been easy for us, and neither one of us have ever owned a business. Like you said, we didn't have the capital, nothing. Like, we started from the ground up.
And so help me understand the dynamic too, because I mean, we've talked about this, but I had a ton of support. Like, my wife, super supportive, my kids. I mean, I took a huge risk, but I had a ton of support. Even my parents were like encouraging me to, do it. My dad invested, there was some support that was there.
So grateful for that.
Yeah. Shout out to Chris.
Yeah.
Our advisory board.
Yeah.
But, and he always reminds us that we get what we pay for. But,
yeah.
and I don't want to imply that like, that you didn't have support, but well, it seems like you didn't necessarily have like, a support, people rallying for you at least, like, people cheering for you and things like that. Like, it was a bit of an independent decision and mode. Is that a safe assumption?
Yeah. I mean, like, my ex-husband was, he was like kind of supportive about it, but he was like very negative about like our partnership and stuff. And so he caused a lot of conflict, like internal conflict for me. And then also like just like that whole like fair basis thing, like that whole, you remember that.
Yep.
Like, it was just a lot to deal with. And I don't know, I wouldn't call that supportive. I would call that like, I don't know.
Maybe
like,
thinking that he had something to gain.
Yeah. And like he took credit for like a lot of like what I was doing, and it was like we built this company. It was me and you, like it's just I didn't have the support, but I felt peace and I just did it.
It's
and
wild.
Like, I don't know, like I've always, like, you and I have always had a good
confidence. Is that because you had that you like, would you consider that you're a high self-confidence person?
I mean, not always. Like, I go through, like, especially after, like, what happened 2 years ago, like, I lost my confidence. I guess I was confident in, like, I was confident in our skill set. Like, and like I said, like, I trusted you, and we had a really good relationship. We still do. We've been through a lot, though. Like, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I just felt good, and I felt confident that we had the skill set to do it, and I knew that like we could service our clients in a better way and provide really high quality stuff.
Yeah.
Like we're marketers, like we know what we're doing, especially in the digital world, and why not?
Yeah.
Like and
then it was wild too, because we experienced some success. We grew like crazy. In hindsight, we maybe grew too fast, but that's for a whole nother podcast.
The roller coaster that we're on.
But it wasn't long after we started, maybe 6 months later ish, that we had grown to the point where it was like, hey, we got to get you here, to Durango. Like the business was evolving and growing. We were hiring, and it was time. And so again, you picked up your whole family and you guys moved. And brought everybody to Durango and did the whole thing. And it's just been wild to see, kind of looking back at like, I don't know, just like these huge moments that you've just sort of you've just sort of charged through, and it's interesting because you've got sort of a, I don't know, you're not loud about it, you're not boisterous about it, but you just move forward all the time, all the time, all the time, and it's just cool to see that, like, you make big moves and you make stuff happen. I mean, in this case, literally physically, moving and things like that. I'm curious now that we're 3 years in and we're looking back at the last 3 years and all of these things that I've sort of mentioned, and the dynamics that have happened here in Durango. When you look at, like, the most challenging moment, the hardest part about the business journey, life journey, whatever it might be, the last 3 years, what comes to mind?
Well, first of all, like, I wanted to move back to Durango.
It's not a bad place to live.
And I'm so grateful that I did, because the hardest moment in the past 2 years was November 19th of 2022. Like, that was about, like, it's been
2 years
from Tuesday.
Yeah.
I had a life-threatening experience, like a very abusive, I'm not going to, like, dive into it, but very abusive marriage at that point that had progressed to a significant night that threatened my life and my son's life. And that is where, like, I've done a lot of therapy and EMDR, but it still, like, chokes me up that my son had to be involved in that situation, because it still impacts him to this day and me. But I remember sitting in bed. I had finally put him to bed that night. It was like 12 at night. And I was, like, in shock. And I was like, how do I leave? How do I get out of here? How, like you're married to someone, you live with them, you have a son with them, like, you're just scared to leave. You don't, like, there's so many unknowns with that, but you have to, because it's gotten to a point where, like, you almost died, and so I packed all of our stuff, but I didn't put it in bags so that my ex wouldn't notice. And I got it all together and, like, was ready, like, had the bags next to it. Like, he couldn't notice anything, though, but he had broken my cell phone that night and taken my car keys. And luckily my cell phone worked. And so I was, like, looking at, like, how to get, like, custody, like, short-term custody, like, of my son to, like, leave and, like, all of that stuff, like, looking at court documents pretty much, because I knew it was coming. I couldn't stay. Like, it got to that point.
And it's feeling emergent.
Yeah, like I was so scared.
Like that day.
Yeah, like so I managed to fall asleep, like, after I made plans and, like, did everything. And then the next day, I told my ex that I was going to go get a new cell phone from the Verizon store and that he needed to find my keys right away. And he was remorseful. Like, he didn't really remember the night because he was a heavy drinker at that time. He had drank a lot of whiskey that night. It started, like, before he even got home from work, and, like, it was just a crazy experience. But we don't have to get into it. But he found my keys finally. I took Onyx with me, and we came here to the office, and I called my mom and I told her what happened, and she said that I needed to make a police report. At that time, like, you're still like, I don't want to get him in trouble. I don't want him to go to jail. I don't want to impact his job. Like, you still kind of care in, like, some sort of sense, and I still do to this day. He's my son's dad. Like, and so that's why I don't like to get, like, I've never told anyone that, like, only my closest friends and, like, some close family members know this story, like, of what actually happened that night. And so I'm still very reserved when I talk about this stuff. But a police officer met me here and took a report, and I told him everything, and he was like, well, like, when it comes to domestic violence, it's an immediate arrest. Like, there's nothing I can do, and so I'm going to go arrest him. And so he did, and I stayed here for a little while with Onyx, and he played in our little playroom here, which I'm grateful we had that. And, like, and then after I knew, like, the police officer told me, like, that he was in jail or whatever, and there a lot of legal stuff happened, and so he was going to be in jail for, like, 2 days or something. And so I stayed at my house that, like, it was like a Sunday or Yeah, it was Sunday. And then the next morning, Monday, I had a call with the DA, the district attorney's office, like going over like the case and everything like that. He had 2 felony charges and 2 misdemeanors. And so I had to navigate all of that because it was really up to me, the victim, like of domestic violence, to like dictate like what was happening with his case and like, do we want to be lenient on him? Like there was like a whole thing. But then that day I went to Phoenix, to my grandma's house and got out of there and like had all of my stuff, like just packed Onyx and my dog up and like went to Phoenix for Thanksgiving. And I came back and I had nowhere to live because Hunter got out of jail and he refused to leave our apartment. And so I was basically homeless with our child and our dog. And I was the one that was paying for that apartment. Like I was the breadwinner, you know, and so he wouldn't leave. And so I ended up having to stay with my friend Misty in Farmington for a month before I could get another apartment. Yeah, and so I was driving to and from Farmington for an entire month to get to the office, and I would have to pay for daycare for my dog, and like I would have to take Onyx to daycare up here, and it was just a lot. Like it's just like your whole life just gets flipped upside down, and you're just like navigating, what do I do? And like the main point of it is to like keep your son safe and get him out of like a very toxic, abusive situation.
Speaking of those hierarchy of needs,
yeah,
you know, that you talked about earlier.
Yeah, and like kind of like still putting some normal life into that. Like he.
At that stage, are you trying to, with your approach with Onyx, are you trying to keep things normal and like not have trauma impact him, or are you trying to like process and like be real? Like what was your approach from a parenting perspective, you know, with like, are you trying to be optimistic and fun and happy and like make sure that that Onyx didn't feel anything, or what, how did you try to like manage that side of it?
I mean, at that time he was 2, and so he couldn't like talk to me about it, and so it was like really hard.
Because you couldn't tell like if he was struggling or not.
And I couldn't tell, like I couldn't actually talk to him and be like, this is what happened, buddy. Like you're not going to see your dad for a while. Like we're not going to go back to our same house, like that type of stuff. I honestly don't remember.
I forgot about even Farmington. It's funny, you know, all the, like, whatever it is, but, you know, these big things, and especially this huge one, there's so many things that I think it's kind of like you had mentioned earlier, like, you know, you just move on, like, you just move forward, like, life continues and you just have to, like, keep going. There's so many things about that, though, that I think that, you know, we forget. Like, I totally forgot that there was a month of commuting and like double daycare and I mean all these other things, and that's what's wild too. And what I'm curious to get into your mind a little bit about is entrepreneurship is, as we mentioned earlier, brutally difficult, and I'd call it lonely at times too. You know, like we were joking about my dad being an advisory board, but jokes aside, there is no advisory board. You know, like there's no boss that you can call and say, hey, I'm having a terrible day, I need the day off. Because you got to make a paycheck. You know, like there's all of these things that happen when you're a business owner. It's a lot like being a parent. You know what I mean? Like you have to keep staying strong and moving forward and all that. But it's not like you could check out. You know, I mean, and I think we did a decent job of, you know, supporting you and like giving you some time and stuff. But it's not like you could stop working. Like it was an impossibility because you owned the business. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I'm curious, like, I want to get into your head a little bit there on because I mentioned that story earlier in Montana, you know, being pregnant, having the broken leg and whatever, and that resolve that I saw. Obviously, you know, this chapter significantly heightened and, you know, a much larger, you know, much larger moment. Yet still there's this like, well, I got to keep going to work. I got to keep going to the office. I got to keep being a mom, and like the strength that came, you know, that I saw from it. And not to imply that, I mean, there was hard days, obviously, but what was the mindset there? Like, walk me through what it felt like what you're experiencing emotionally in terms of, because there's this bucket of what you experienced, right? The trauma, the abuse, like, you know, whatever, this bucket. Well, I don't understand that, but I can at least like see that, you know what I mean? And then there's the other bucket of that resolve and that need to continue on for Onyx and the business and yourself and all of that. I want to hear like, you know, those what's going through your head on those drives to and from Farmington, or you know what I mean? Like, walk me through the mindset after there of and how you kept just moving forward.
Well, I don't know. Like, I had PTSD, like, bad, and I went to therapy. I had to do EMDR. Like, I was in a really bad place, which is why it was like the hardest thing to go through. It's one thing going through the trauma, but it's the after effects that really, really mess with you. Like, I was in a stupor for months, like 6 to 12 months probably after that. It impacted the quality of my work. It impacted our business. It impacted my interpersonal relationships, like, especially between me and you. Like, it was hard because I couldn't retain anything. I had no memory. Like, every day I was like super foggy. Things were slipping through the cracks. Like, I don't even know how I got through it. I'm so, like, I am so proud to this day that, like, I am a single mother raising my son in Durango, Colorado, which is it's expensive to live here, but I managed. Like, I never got under.
And you sign your own paychecks.
Yeah, and
like, not only are you a single mother making it happen in Durango, no one's signing checks for it. Like, you literally are making it happen.
Yeah, but I mean, so many things happened, like, that were unfair. Like, my property manager made me move into the same complex, like a unit in the same complex, like, as Hunter. So I had to hide for a year, like, to make sure that he didn't know where I lived. And they said that they were going to kick him out, and they didn't. They let him stay there, and we still live in the same property, like, or complex, like, for our townhomes. And it's like, so living in fear for a year that he's going to know where I live, that was crazy. And then, like, he didn't see his son for an entire year either. Like, Onyx, like, I can't even imagine, like, how he felt, like, just having his dad ripped out of his life. And I don't know, like, I don't know how I got through it, honestly, and I don't even remember. Like, I was not good mentally at all then. Like, I remember, like, I never stopped working. I was working over Thanksgiving, but I was still in, like, this stupor. Like, I had PTSD hard. Like, my therapist told me that PTSD is equivalent to a TBI for some time, like, because it really impacts, like, the functioning of your brain.
Right.
And
so sorry, finish your thought.
No, go ahead.
Well, and it's fascinating because, you talked about, like, what motivates you or what fulfills you, and that's learning.
Yeah.
And the ability to retain information and learn was stifled. You also brought up earlier that, like, hierarchy of needs from the, from your time in I think it was called casework. But it's almost like, even though technically they were met, food, shelter, safety, somewhat, but generally speaking, like,
the safety part was a little iffy.
And maybe that's it. That hierarchy of needs wasn't, completely established. And so then these other components of life couldn't function yet. And I'm not a therapist at all and not here to, unpack that. But I do think that that's fascinating because, like, I think about how when I get to do the things that fulfill me, building stuff, doing a thing, making something from nothing, growing things, like, I'm happier.
Yeah.
And then I get more momentum and I do more of those things and I build more things and I feel good the next day. It's like this great thing. And for everybody, when you're in, like, a funk or you've had a hard time, one of the things, and this is what I want to, is I know you don't remember, like, that you don't know necessarily how you got through it all. But one of the things that I think is most admirable about people, it's one thing to sit here on a podcast and, like, talk about the good, have your kind of, like, Instagram, quotable one-liners of, like, kids sticking with it or whatever. But if somebody truly pulls themselves out of a dark place or a low spot or whatever, you've got to understand that they're in a low spot. Like, that's what I think is so remarkable and noteworthy. It's not like somebody who's in this high spot on a podcast giving the tips and the tricks for how to, pull yourself up from your bootstraps and,
how to be successful.
Go take an ice bath or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, cause I've experienced glimpses of it, of, like having a bad day or in a funk or whatever, and how hard it is to turn that around. Mm-hmm. It's one thing when you're having good momentum to keep the good momentum going. It's a whole nother thing to be having, a low chapter and to pull up from that. And you did. And I think that that's wildly impressive and, it's incredible. And I'm just kind of curious. And again, I know that like some of those specifics aren't there, but help me let me get into your mind a little bit. I mean, was it survival or were you like, was there some intentionality of wanting to pull yourself from there, not having a choice? And you also had touched a little bit on like not wanting to be the victim. I just want to hear again, because I've seen from like a low to now we're back.
We're back, baby.
We're podcasting. But seriously, we are. And it took 2 years.
It took 2 years.
I
mean, like a year and a half, maybe.
And we're almost back.
Yeah.
I mean, but generally speaking, we're back. Like, I think we feel it. You know what I mean? Like the business, your energy, and 2 years though of evolution and growth. Yeah. That's crazy. How?
Well, I mean, like I said, therapy, EMDR, I had to being active really helps, like exercising. I remember I got really into running, then not as excessive as Ben. Let me just say that. But just keeping that normalcy within our life. Another thing that I do want to mention before we dive into our what happened with our business at that time was that thank God I moved back to Durango when I did, and I was here when everything happened because I did not have a support system in Montana. I had friends, but not my lifelong friends that I depended on, and just the amount of support that I got going through this, for Onyx, what Onyx and what we went through. I remember when everything happened, you and Ryan brought your guns to work to make sure that I was safe, and we would lock the front door to make sure that everything was good, and all of my girlfriends and you and Ryan came and helped me move everything out of my old house while Hunter was at work, to get it in my new apartment or new townhome. And just my friend Kelsey came over and cooked me dinner, Onyx and me dinner, and I would go to dinner at my friend Max and Bess or Morgan's house, or go stay with Erica in Farmington and hang out with her and the kids, so Onyx could play with them, and just so much support. And my friend Brooke worked with Hunter at the time on the park crew, and it was so hard for her. She actually ended up not working on park crew anymore because she found out she didn't want to know what happened at first because she had to maintain that work relationship with him, and then she found out what happened, and it she cares about me, and that felt really good to have these people that actually genuinely care about me,
right,
and want me to be okay. That's the most important thing in life, is to surround yourself with good, genuine people that actually care about you. I've built traditions, because of what happened there. My friend Beth, me and Beth, I go to Noel night with, we take the kids to Noel night every year now, and we go trick-or-treating every year now. I've built these really fantastic friendships and traditions with this core group, and I will never take that for granted. So thank you all if you're listening.
Isn't that neat? Because that stuff's beautiful, when and there is really nothing more powerful than people that love each other, a true community of support and things like that. And I can just, those traditions, I love that idea that these great things can't, because now it'll be the third Noel night, the third Thanksgiving, and, these things like that. And it's just fascinating how I don't know. Sometimes stuff comes to a head, and then there's good that comes, afterwards. It's like, how people always say, like, if you're watching something tragic, look at who's running towards it. Like, look who's running to help or whatever. Yeah, it's wild, and it's cool, with hindsight. And I don't know if you call it, divine intervention or faith or whatever, but the fact that you were back in Durango, is noteworthy, and I think it's just cool that that the support system was there.
And another thing is, like, divorce is frowned upon, especially like in Christianity. Like, I believe in God, like, I'm a Christian, and like there's like all this like remorse, like, oh, you shouldn't get a divorce and all this stuff. I had peace when it happened. It took 4 months after it happened for me to feel the peace, like, because I was surviving in that time. But like, I remember driving, I had picked Onyx up from school, and I was driving home like on 160, and like, I remember just like cry laughing, like being like, oh my gosh, my life is like significantly better. And that was only 4 months after it happened. Like, my life
After the divorce or after the night?
After the night.
Okay.
The divorce took forever.
Yeah. That's a whole nother podcast.
I don't even want to get into that. The divorce sucked. Especially because I was the one that got the bad end of the stick.
Right.
So
yeah.
But
what's crazy? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, going back to, like, your questions, like, it took a long time, like, for me to manage my emotions again. Like, I was a hot mess when I would come into the office every day. Like, I had no capacity to train our new employees, so they were just, like, thrown to the wolves pretty much. Like, you and I were having conflicts on a regular basis because, like, how could you possibly understand, like, what I was going through? And that's not your fault.
Right.
How could you know? Like, my brain was broken, and you were just like, what the hell? Like, my business partner, who's, like, usually so on top of her stuff, is, like, having all of these things slip through the cracks. And, like, we were just having so many issues, like, with me and, like, our culture within our teams and stuff. And, like, I didn't want that. Like, I did not want that at all, but I was so on edge all the time, and, like, very emotionally, like, I would react, like, very easily, like, get set off really easily, and that was, like, not who I am. Like, that's not who I am at all. Like, I'm a very, like, chill and down-to-earth person. Like, I am very type A. Like, let's just throw that out there. Like,
For the
I can
record.
be, like, OCD and type A and organized and all that, but, like,
even a healthy Brittany's a very type A.
When it comes to, like, emotions, like, I'm usually, like, relaxed and, like, go with the flow, and I was not, like,
well,
at
that's
all.
and that's what I think makes your story all the more worth telling and noteworthy. Is we mentioned earlier, business ownership is brutally difficult. I mean, gosh, I look back at my last 3 years and I think about what a wild journey it's been, and how high the highs have been, how low the lows have been, and all that stuff. It's not like you had this safe, stable job that you could come in and just pull the lever and, like, shut it off and, like, deal with life and come to work a little bit and get a paycheck or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and at the time too, on top of it, I mean, you touched on, like, you and I were fire and gas for a while there.
Oh my gosh.
And because we're opposites for a reason. That's why we partnered, and that's good and bad. But there also was a ton of just normal life stresses in those chapters too. Like, with the business growing and shrinking and growing and shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember there were some times where we were needing, I don't remember what it was, but we needed some money or whatever, and we're both because we don't have walls at the office, which we're getting walls right as we speak, everybody.
They're right there.
But we're having a meeting in my truck, and we're both crying, and it's like, I don't know, it's like those years were wild and incredibly difficult for anybody, let alone all this other stuff,
Yeah.
having to deal with it. And I just think it's wild or not wild. I think it's incredible that, and like I mentioned, there was there's that recovery, like there's that pull up from the bottom, I don't know if rock bottom's the right term, but there's that, like, that healing that happened. It's so, I don't know, it's crazy to see when you look back now, business, life, whatever, but let's just say for the last 3 years, you kind of look back. What's the primary emotion that you feel?
I don't know, like, if it's, like, an emotion, but, like, I I guess I feel pride just because of my resilience. Like, I was able to get through all of that. Like, it's a struggle. It was a struggle. It still is a struggle to this day. Like, but I'm proud of myself. I was able to get through that. I was able to like support my household, like my son, and like our business, and like still get through it, and like you and I came out on the other side. Like, I did have to do coaching with like Susie, and like she was so helpful, like just within our partnership dynamic, and just a lot of like more exercise, just a lot of like eating healthy, exercising, making sure that I'm stable mentally. Like, I remember you would come in and you're like, Brittany, you're like a storm when you come into the office. Like, if you're not good, the entire office isn't good. Like, and because like that's where I was at. And so I would have to like stay home a lot of the time. And like, so I had to like set boundaries, and you were pissed about that. Like, you were so pissed about the boundaries that had to happen. Like, I needed to go snowboarding on Fridays because I had Onyx all the time, and so when was I going to go do the thing that I love to actually like fill myself up, and like I'm a single mother. I have to like be present with my son at night. Like, I can't be like working and texting all the time. And like before that, I was working to like run away from my life because it was so toxic and abusive and bad. But I think like I'm just so proud of, I feel pride. Like, I feel so proud of like what I've overcome, because adversity makes the person who they are. It makes you stronger. It makes you who you are. Like, it just like fuels you. And I keep getting thrown curveballs, but nothing will compare to what I went through that night and that healing process. Like, maybe, I mean, there are some things that would compare to that, but you get what I'm saying. But my life is so good now. Like, and my mom would always give me this Bible quote when I was struggling, when like going through all of this stuff. And she's like, take, I don't remember the quote exactly, but it's like, take beauty from ashes. And so that's like literally what happened. Like, the Lord took my ashes and gave me beauty, and my life is it's thriving right now. Our business is stable. We're doing well. My son is in preschool. Like, he's doing so good in school. He's such a good boy, and like, I also have like a supportive partner now, and like, he takes care of me, and he's like, there's no conflict within our relationship at all. And it's just like very much like we communicate in a healthy way. And I've never experienced that before in my past relationships, especially my marriage. And I don't know, I'm just proud.
Love that. What a great emotion to feel, when you're looking back. And it's interesting too, because you talk about like adversity forms you, and I don't know, it kind of, when I talk to most of the high performing people that I get to, sit across this table with and talk to, have come through some sort of significant adversity. And then there's this like confident, shoulders up, like I can handle it now, that I think sets us up for success in other ways, and from the long term. I mean, it's crazy because like now stuff will happen at work or at the business, and we're like, whatever, like been through way worse, that's just another day at the office,
Yeah.
And it's crazy, and it's not that like you hope for adversity for anybody. I certainly don't, but there definitely is some strength that comes, from the other side of adversity, that I think better prepares us to deal with life's challenges, the highs and the lows and whatever. It almost like helps put things into perspective, maybe. But I'm curious, because you had mentioned communication, and we don't need to like dive into, our partnership. I won't let it. No, I'm just kidding. But the last few years, and don't take the offense to this, but I'm surprised we survived it.
Me too.
From a company, but especially from a partnership, and we almost didn't.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually coming back to that idea when we talked about your ability to gather new information and change, or to evolve. I'm fascinated that you mentioned communication with the context of a weakness, or like not having that in other relationships, because I think one of the things that I think the reason that our partnership survived and that the business has survived has been the ability to communicate. Like, don't you think? I actually would say that in terms of like relationships in my life, with the exception of my wife, and but that we have the strongest communication, the ability to communicate the strongest. And I think some of that has come from the being trauma informed well before even, the significant event that we've been discussing. But I'm curious your thoughts on that. Like, it seemed to me like a strength of yours, at least in terms of our dynamic, has been communication. Was that an anomaly, to your marriage? Was that a trauma response, a stress? Because or do you consider yourself a strong communicator?
No, like
Interesting.
kind of like I can speak my truth. I can like keep my composure, especially now. Like there were times when you and I would communicate and we were terrible at it. Like we would get in fights and stuff. But I don't know. I think when it comes to like when I don't feel like I have a voice and it's a toxic environment and it's chaotic and I don't have control over the situation, I can't communicate very well. I shut down instead and I avoid conflict.
Meanwhile, I'm like, I want to solve the problem yesterday.
Exactly. And so
we would clash a little bit with that.
And that's like one thing is like I need space to like actually digest things and think about them a little bit more. And so in my marriage, it was chaos and I had no control, even though I was the one like doing everything, like keeping our household, like managing that entire aspect. And so that I think it's when there's like conflict and I feel out of control, I shut down a little bit. But for the most part, like I can communicate and it's a work in progress. Like, I don't think anyone's perfect ever, and I'm still working on myself. Like, I'm not fully healed yet. Like, I still have my things. Like, I went through, like, in those 2 years, like, I was very insecure. Like, I did not think highly of myself at all. Like, I had no self-worth, like, through that either. Like, because of what happened and because of the abuse for so many years, like, I just felt like a like a piece of shit. Like, honestly, like, I didn't see my worth at all. And I think, like, support systems, my mom was a huge support system after everything that happened. Like, even, like, after we got over the whole, like, not supporting me starting the business thing, and she's, like, always my sounding board. She's always there for me. Like, she always answers the phone, and she always talks me through things, and she's just really great at that. And so support system, my mom, like exercise, like just everything. Like you have to have balance in your life to just get you to where you are, to be able to be healthy and communicating, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny too, because when I look back, and like we've alluded to, but we had some hard times, like some very, very hard times with the partnership and the business and things like that. And it's funny though, when you get the benefit of hindsight, and to be fair, we're at a very good place right now, so I get to kind of look back at things with a smile on my face. But one of the things that you taught me was that balance idea and like boundaries and stuff that I was pretty resistant to, because I had mentioned like what fulfills me is building. And I get that momentum and I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
And I think that there's some really good things about that about me. Like I've got a pretty deep tank. It takes a lot for me to empty my tank, and I can rock and roll. But I learned from you reluctantly, the benefits of setting boundaries and like, not needing to call that client back at 7 p.m. or, scheduling some time for my workouts, my exercises or whatever. And so it's interesting because, and I don't know that any of that was necessarily intentional or, survival mechanism, but in terms of our dynamic, I think that there's been some really healthy, kind of cool co-evolution, where like you've learned some stuff from me and changed some of your, behaviors and world beliefs or perspectives on the world. But I have too a ton from, your side of things. And it's been cool to see, like where that balance lies, and I'm the happiest and healthiest I've ever been for sure. And I don't think that I would be if it weren't for the lessons learned in like boundary setting and balance and things like that. I probably would just work myself to death, had I not learned it. And I don't know. I just think it's fascinating that like some of it was a necessity, like you were in survival mode, like, whatever. And I'm resisting and fighting back and pushing like, you got to text me back whenever.
Yeah.
But, then I learned like, oh, we can deal with that tomorrow, whatever. So, and it's just cool how like, it's an example of how when somebody can forge onward, and have that resiliency and that strength to just continue forward. Like we've talked about, there's kind of these themes in your life of like, just going to keep going, how much that can actually impact other people too, in a positive way. You know what I mean?
That's cool. Yeah.
Like I don't think I would have the relationship with boundaries and well, specifically boundaries and balance had it not been, for you needing that stuff through that experience, and then me like being forced to learn it because, the business relied on it. It's just interesting.
I remember, like, I still tell you this to the day, like, Ben, only take 3 meetings. Like, you're in control of your schedule. You are doing this to yourself. Like, you're busy because you're scheduling 5 meetings in a day, and then you have no time for, like, any clerical work to, like,
send email. And then I text Brittany, I'm like, I'm
I'm
overwhelmed.
so busy. And I'm like, I'm busy. Quit texting me. You're distracting me right now.
You're the one that took the meetings.
Yeah. Or, no, I'm the one fulfilling all the work. Like, so I think, honestly, you starting to do that, setting boundaries and finding balance in your own life has actually helped our relationship and stabilized our relationship because we both, like, family is the most important thing. Like, yes, we have this business so that we can set our family up for success and, like, really give them a good life. But, like,
it's just digital marketing.
Yeah, we have 24 hours before we call clients back or, like, email them back, like, that type of thing. Granted, like, you and I are very responsive. That's what sets us apart from a lot of businesses, is because we communicate well with our clients and just provide quality work, and we're responsive. We're there to support them. But at the end of the day, like, we have lives outside of this. Like, this is just one part of it.
Right.
And so I think that's huge that you're starting to recognize that, and it's actually impacting our relationship in a good way, like in a positive way. So.
Yeah, it's wild because, well, you just worded it really well, that we have lives, like work is just part of our lives. Like there's all these other things, relationships and passions and joys and traumas and challenges and adversities and all of that stuff. Yeah. And it's so, I think, important to remember that about everybody, everyone that we're interacting with and dealing with. One of so there was a time I lost my aunt in a car accident. It was tragic. She died in a car accident. Yeah. And there's a story about a family member that was, at a gas station or something, and somebody was rude to her. And it was right after the loss of her sister. And she basically was like, if you had any, tells it back to us, like, if you had any idea, what I'm going through today, you wouldn't be treating me like that. And I love, and I think that for everybody, if we can remember that, like what you were just mentioning, that there's lives outside of work, like we get a sliver of perspective into somebody's life when there's so much other things. It will allow us to like approach people with empathy and patience and love and kindness and, all of these things. Cause we've dove into yours, but everybody has challenges. Everybody has adversity and struggles and challenge, all of these things. And I just can't help but think of like, what a beautiful world it can be if we not necessarily need to know them. We don't need to know what everybody's going through. Just know that they are. Well, that everybody's going through something, and we can like love harder and be more patient. And, those are a lot of things that you taught me, because granted, I had no choice. I'm like,
well, life is hard. Why make it harder for other people? And so we need to approach every situation with kindness. Like, and if you can't be kind, then just keep your mouth shut or like go away. Like my mom always says, like, if it's not loving, helpful, or, like kind, loving, or helpful, then don't say it at all, And so it's just like sometimes our emotions get the best of us, and we can't always live by that. But it's a good approach, like just being a genuinely good person in this world today is very like it's not prevalent. Like, it's not like, not a lot of people, they have their own best interest in mind. They don't care about other people. And so when you find good people like that, surround yourself with them is like what I would say.
Yeah.
So.
So now that, we're in a good place, business is doing well, you've got, this thriving family outside of work and, all of these things, has it changed your perspective on the world? Has it changed belief systems or just kind of like holistically speaking of how you view the world, good or bad?
I wouldn't say like the world, like maybe my world, like the court system and like divorce, like the laws about divorce and domestic violence and all of those things. It's changed my perspective on that. I have no faith in our government, like judicial system, I guess I should say. Like, I got completely screwed in our divorce where I had to pay my abuser to get out of my life. Like, I had to pay him because I had a business. So I had to pay him out on our business. And now I'm paying child support, which is crazy, especially because I'm the custodial parent. I am the decision maker of our son, and I take care of him way more. But since it's 50-50, I make more money than him, I have to pay him out. And so I pay him a ton of money every single month, and I'm still the one that's buying all the clothes for Onyx, all of his stuff. Like, I have to pack a bag every time he goes to his dad's house. Like, and if my ex is buying anything for Onyx, then I'm not seeing it, And so, I'm a little bitter in that sense. I feel that domestic violence should be a factor when it comes to the financial aspect of a divorce. I was homeless. I had a bunch of legal fees, all of this stuff. And I went through a ton and still raised our son. And the court system forgot about all of that. The judge forgot about all of that and was like, oh yeah, you make more money, you pay him child support now. So I'm very bitter about that to this day. And I feel like our legal system needs some adjustments. And so that kind of lit a fire in me. And when I'm not as busy with work, I would like to get more involved in nonprofit or putting my experience into helping other people in some way. I don't want to tee that up because I'm not anywhere close to that. It takes a lot of time to get implemented into politics and all of that stuff. And I said, I'm a single mother and I own a business, and so it's been really hard, but I still have a passion.
You have a desire to make some change there. Yeah.
At some point. So that's the only perspective that's changed. Granted, I understand trauma now. Everyone has some sort of trauma in their life, but a significant event like that where your life is threatened and your child's life is threatened, it does something to you. And but I'm not bitter in that happened, because if it hadn't have happened, I would have never left. I was so scared to leave because of the financial burden it would have caused. And I've a lot of money. It's caused a lot of financial burden, but I would pay millions to get out of a toxic situation like that. I am so grateful that happened to give me the best life that I can live. So,
right.
Yeah. So the only thing is the court system. I have really bad views about Colorado law when it comes to divorce. So
we have, I do know some people in the marketing world. So when we need to get the word out about that, we'll be able to help with that. But no, Brittany, thank you so much thanks for being vulnerable, and thanks for sharing your story, because I think so many times the things that people go through go unseen. And so, by you being vulnerable and being willing to share some of your story, my hope is that lets others know that, they can get through it too, whatever it is that they're dealing with and they're struggling with, and they can see this example of strength and resiliency and things like that. But beyond that, thanks for believing in me. Thanks for being a great partner, and, for fighting through the highs and the lows and, all of these things that we've experienced together the last few years. And, just this wild roller coaster of a ride that business ownership is. And, to have all of the outside things happening along the way too, I can't even fathom, because I've had a very long 3 years and I can't even imagine, And thank you for inspiring by example, because that's what this whole thing's about, is that I'm trying to inject positivity and hope and, encouragement and optimism and all these great things into the world. And you've been doing it way, way, way longer than you realize. And you've been doing it way more so than even just the event that we kind of dove into. I'd mentioned the little example in Montana, but even well beyond that, your fortitude and resiliency, the world needs more of it. And so thank you. And so I've got, what's coming, but I've got my Inspired by Example shirt for you.
Yay, a black one.
Because you really are inspiring by example, Brittany. And I hope you know it. And I hope you know that the world needs more people like you. And so just thank you so much for being who you are. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for accepting me for who I am, and for fighting through all of this too. Like I really am excited for having a stable business and relationship, and really making a turn from that dark place that we both kind of had to go through. So, I'm excited for our future.
I was just going to say, I can't wait to see where we go.
Right?
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.